Hello everybody, this is Multanon, and I know it's been a while since my last tutorial, but I promise that today I will show you something amazing. Because, as usual, I have solved the next biggest mystery in the history. No, that doesn't sound right. I solved the next biggest. Now, I've solved the biggest mystery. There isn't really any other way to put it, right? Okay, so here goes. I've solved the biggest mystery in the history of mankind. At least in the history of After Effects. But still, it was pretty much a big mystery and there was a bunch of way around it. But to cut a long story short, 3D layers. As you can see in here, this is an example of the techniques that probably most of us are using if we are not using a third-party plugins. And basically what this is, it's 30 duplicates of the same layer that make up this 3D look. As you can see, it takes a while to render and to navigate, but the good thing is that we have, the ability to move the camera around, to orbit the camera, and it looks quite okay. But if we move a bit to the side, then we can see that this is basically a bunch of layers. The downside of this is that you need to have a stroke around this, because if you don't, this is how it will look. Not very nice, huh? Well, you can of course change the front layer, this one. Oh, let me just show you how many layers I have in here. Very convenient, right? And easy to manage. Sure. We can of course apply hue, saturation to this and do stuff like that. This will only affect the first layer, so the face layer, but you know what I mean. If you want more details about this technique and the next that I'm going to show you, then just simply go to Creative Cow podcast, where Aaron Rabinowitz is talking about this 3D extruded text. Make sure to check that out. But I assure you, after watching this tutorial, everything will change. And I would like to point out that this tutorial can only be followed in CS3 because it uses some new features that enabled me to create this amazing preset that I'm going to show you in a few seconds. So this is the second one, the second method that Aaron is showing, and that is known to After Effects users. And both of these methods create quite good results. Well, as long as you can say that something looks good when you take the tracking tool and just zoom in and you see all this nasty stuff. And this is because both of these effects are based on pixels, and this is rasterized. So even when I zoom in here, I get this nasty ramping or these nasty edges, and this is obviously not something that we would like in creating a title sequence, for example, with some cool 3D text, and not only 3D text but 3D shapes, 3D objects like logos or design elements, arrows, whatever, you name it. Okay, so here comes the big moment. Let me just turn this off and turn this off, and I will show you what I've created especially for you guys. And I would like to point out that at the beginning I thought that maybe I could get a few bucks of this preset if you would be so kind and just go ahead and purchase it, but I thought, hey, I had a good day today, so no charge. Here it is. This is a 3D text made of my custom effect called 3D Shape Extruder. As you can see, this is fully 3D. I have only one layer, I will click my shy button here to show you that I'm not cheating. And I have a camera, and I have a grid to show you that this is really a 3D environment. And the things that I like most about this, that this extruded layer still behaves and reacts like any other 3D layer. It casts shadows, you can parent it to a null or to another layer, and above all, the features that I'm going to show you is that it consists only of one layer. You don't need anything else, one layer. Well, you of course can use a bunch of layers to create more stunning visual compositions, but the basic version of extruding needs just one simple layer. And I'm pretty proud of this. And not only it can be textured, but it can also reflect the world around it. So if you create a background, for example, then you can simply make this text reflect whatever is surrounding it. So I'm going to show you this in a few seconds. Now just let's take a look. And please notice that we have sort of gradient going on in here, and we can of course change that, and we can do pretty much anything you would like with it. So and of course this is vector based, so if I take my tracking tool and just go ahead and zoom in, just look how sharp this is. And none of that techniques gives you this, I assure you. There are of course plugins out there like Zaxworks Invigorator or something like that, but I really try to use as much as I can inside After Effects without having to go to third-party plugins. And I wanted to mention one more thing. A friend of mine that is watching my tutorials told me that asked me not to give long introductions because it's boring, and he just can't wait to see what's the tutorial about. And so I thought, well, maybe he's right, and I'll just skip the long introduction. So Casper, this is for you. I'm skipping the long introduction. I will cut the long story short, and basically I will show what this tutorial is all about without talking about some non-related and boring stuff like what I have for lunch today, for example. And what I had was a macaroni and cheese, I guess. I can't really remember, because it's 5:30 in the morning again, and I'm recording this tutorial. I'm pretty tired. I don't know what I'm talking about, and I would really like to go to sleep now. Yeah. What? Yeah. Just okay. So let's move on. As you can see, we have a 3D text layer in here, and what else? What else can we do with my amazing preset that I'm going to show you in a few seconds? We can do shapes. Basically, we can do any vector-based graphics. So logos are also available. Are also possible to do. And here's more advanced example. Sweet, huh? And here you can see how the text reflects the background, the clouds that are in the background. And I just wanted to mention that I got this background from a friend of mine, and I really encourage you to visit his website. You probably know this guy. His name is Andrew Kramer, and he's got pretty exciting products. And the one that you see in my tutorial is let me just go to products, is Real Clouds. And you will get the file that I'm using, which is Real Clouds number 5, but it will be scaled down, so just to avoid any copyright issues and stuff like that. If you're really thinking about boosting up your work and your workflow, you should really consider getting some of these. I really recommend sound effects and riot gear and the real clouds. They're pretty cool. Okay, back to the tutorial. So this is a more advanced example of 3D, of having a 3D layer, and here's another example, this time with some camera movement and some fire burning. Pretty awesome, huh? Yeah. And here this one is just to show you that you can also pre-compose this or whatever. You can pre-compose this 3D layers and then have a camera inside a new composition. This is a pre-comp, and it will also react to the camera. So what's this? Oh, okay, let's close this down. So let's get to the point. Let's close this down. Let's create a new comp. Let's make it 500 by 300, for example, 5 seconds long. That's okay. And let's create a new text layer. For example, amazing, or maybe something more meaningful like awesome. Awesome 3D. Yeah, that's right. Is that how you spell it? Let me just look that up. Nope, that's the way. Okay, sorry for that. And yeah, no, that even turned out quite nice. Okay, so let's leave this as it is. And now the first step is to create outlines from this text layer. We can leave the original for future reference if we need to. And now the fun part. Let's apply 3D Shape Extruder. Ka-ching! Nothing happens. Okay, but you have to just twirl down to the contents, and here's some tips on how to keep everything clean while creating this effect. First of all, add a new group. Unfortunately, you cannot save this in the preset, so you have to do it on your own. Call this text. Now move all of these shapes into this group, and then move the group above the group one that is created from the preset. Name this group as Extrusion, and rename this to Extruder. And still nothing happens. Here's the first thing. If you just want to have the extrusion, then you can move this text group into the extrusion group, and of course you have to turn this into a 3D layer and add a new camera. New camera, 35mm preset. Okay, and as you can see, it already takes effect. You can rotate around it, orbit around it, do all that, good stuff. And let's reset the camera. But we have the same problem we had with the 30 layers example that I've showed you a few minutes ago. And to solve this, you just have to duplicate this text layer, this text group, and move it above the extrusion group. So let's name this text, and let's rename this to source. And now, while you have this group selected, you simply change the fill color to whatever you like. And there we go, nice 3D extruded text. And let's move down to the controls for this preset, for this custom effect. As you can see, we have the depth, and this is the depth of extrusion. Let me just orbit the camera around so you could see this a bit better. Let's increase this to 100, for example. You get the point? Quite straightforward. You might be wondering what those points are. I will get to that in a second. See, there are 3 points. Don't think about them for now. And the next parameter, density. Density may be also referred as quality. If you decrease the density to 100, then this depth is going to be distributed, you know, on a longer distance. What this means that when you rotate it closer to the camera, you could see the same effect that you could see in the in one of the previous examples. So when you increase the density to 200 and increase the depth to 300, for example, then you can no longer see it. But I really think that the best settings for extruding is like having the density of 100 and then the depth of 40 or 20 or so. This always looks okay, and it renders fast, and as you can see, everything looks cool. Okay, so the next parameter, offset. Offset basically offsets the extrusions, so we can, you know, like do whoosh, something like that. It's pretty cool. And rotation. Rotation is well, rotation usually generates poor visual effects. Not really cool, but if you have the camera looking straight to the text, then you can apply the rotation. For example, 90 degrees, and you see what I mean. This is what it creates. Then you can increase the depth to 100, for example, and you can also change the opacity. I've skipped the curvature, I'll get to that in a second. Opacity. As you can see, we have a point control. Don't let that confuse you. It's just, you know, for the sake of saving some space in the effects palette. It's basically the start opacity and the end opacity. So if I set this to 10 and I set the end opacity to 0, then we have something like this. And this looks pretty cool, but when you move the camera, if you move the camera slightly, it's you know, it's quite okay. But if you do something like this, it really gets you know, sort of weird. So be careful on using rotation. But this looks cool when you offset this animation. So, you know, very cool, very cool. This looks amazing. Okay, offset to 0 and rotation to 0, and let's reset the camera. Maybe let's move it just a little bit. And okay, so we already know what the opacity is. When we set it to 100, then we just have a slight opacity at the end, but to 10, for example. Okay, so Matana was talking about the opacity, right? So that this is the thing that makes up this 3D look, because when you're just increase this to 100, then you don't see those edges very good. So just as a reminder. And now what? Oh yes, the curvature. Well, the thing with the curvature is that it works best with the low density. I mean, the density is set to 0 even should be okay. So let's set the density to 0, and then let's make the curvature 0 and 100. See what happens? Basically it bends the extrusion upwards, well, basically it bends the extrusion, downwards, upwards, or to the sides, because this is the X curvature and this is the Y curvature. So when I set this to 100, for example, then it will go like this. So pretty cool effect. Well, it always works best when you set the Y curvature to to something else than 0, because right now it's sort of weird, but it can still create pretty cool effects. And again, it works fantastic with the offset, because when I set this to like a high number, so, and turn this off, for example, then you can animate in the offset value, and this will just show up the extrusion. Yeah, something like that. And then you can, for example, just blink this, or just set the opacity to 100, or do whatever you like. It still creates pretty cool effects. And what next? The curvature, depth, density, offset. We've talked about this. And oh yes, the reference point. What is this mysterious reference point? Well, I figured, or Tenon figured, that maybe you would like to apply some effects to this layer, like, for example, CC radial fast blur. And what this does, well, you probably know what this does. It creates this ray-like effect. Let's set this to about 80. Pretty cool. But as you can see, it doesn't matter how I rotate the camera, it still blurs from the same point in on the layer. So we don't want that. We want the center point to be set to where the extrusion is coming from, and that's what the reference point is all about. So let's twirl down the effects. Let's twirl down the CC radial fast blur and the Polygon Studio 3D Shape Extruder. And now we can just alt-click on the stopwatch, take the pick whip tool and point the center to the reference point. Nothing changes so far. Look what happens when I rotate the camera. Sweet! But as you can see, it also blurs the face of the extrusion, and we don't want that. Well, I don't want that, and Tenon wouldn't want that, as far as I know him well. So the way around it is, we still have this reference text layer, the original one, so we can just turn this into 3D, because as you remember, we didn't move the 3D layer, we just orbited the camera, so we can have this kind of effect going on, which is pretty sweet, I think. And as you can see, the rays start to get a little orange tint in this area when they go through the text itself, and this is because it also blurs out the text group, which is, let me turn off the effect for now, which is the original face of the 3D extruded layer, as you can see. So when I turn the effect back on and change the color of this text group to, for example, green, just to show you how this works, it will tint green from this moment. And I believe that this is pretty cool, because it just because this allows you to do some more incredible stuff, and like, for example, the Batman sign, or whatever. Let's reset the camera and let's turn this layer off, and let's turn the fast radial blur off also, and let's turn the color to something more appropriate, maybe a little bit red or orange, dark orange. Okay, so I believe we've covered the basics of this 3D extrusion custom effect, but there's much more to it. As you probably noticed, this is basically a shape layer which is new to After Effects CS3, and because of that it has all the features of the regular shape layer. So for example, I can add a round corners to this, and voila, let's set the radius to 50. Nothing happens. Okay, probably too big number, but you get the point. I can modify this using the shape layer modifiers, and everything will change as well. So let's reset the camera again, and let's use the twist, for example, and set the twist angle to 50. Ta-da! This is kind of a weird looking effect, but you get the point. We can also add a repeater, which is my personal favorite, along with the round corners. If we add the repeater, look what happens. Let's just set the position to 0 and set the Y position to about 70, maybe even less, 40. Set the offset to -1, and ta-da! And this is of course a 3D extruded text layer as well. So we can create pretty amazing stuff with this. Let's increase the density to 100. What do you say to that? Ha! Sweet. And this repeater works best with some shape layers. I believe I have an example in here somewhere. Shape Advanced, I guess. Yes, that's right. Take a look at this. And this is of course only one extruded star that is repeated along the x-axis. So quite interesting results. Okay, back to the examples. And what else can we do with this? Let's get rid of this repeater. And okay, let's get more details about making this look even cooler. So first thing is that while having this original text layer, text group, which we will call the face, maybe let's rename this to text face, and if we're doing a little cleaning up, let's call this source as extrusion source. Then we can change the color and the fill and the stroke of the face, leaving the extrusion as it is. So let's set the stroke to gradient, and let's set the gradient to be maybe something like light yellow to dark orange, like so. And we of course have to set the stroke width to something more than 0.1, right? Okay, and now we can grab the controllers and just set the fill, set the stroke to go the way we'd like it. I mean the gradient itself. So something like this, and voila, looks kind of cool. At least I like it. And we can do the same thing with the extrusion. So let's go to the extrusion, and we can do this in two ways. We can first select the group and then go to those settings, but we can just add a gradient stroke group that will go right above the extruder and right below the extrusion source, and that way we can we have much more control over it. So here are the controllers, and we can just move them around easily. As you can see, this already takes effect. Maybe let's set the opacity a bit higher. Sweet. And we also, this is my favorite part, we also have the blending modes available. So let's set this to overlay, and nothing happens. Fantastic. Maybe we should move this above. Nothing happens. Sweet. No. This is so wrong. Something is very, very wrong. Well, I'm planning to make a tutorial on the shape layers exclusively, because they can be very confusing. As you can see, I know I could use a tutorial like that, but since I haven't found any so far, then I will just have to, take my time and go into detail on this, and then do a tutorial for you guys, so you don't have to be wondering how the things work. Okay, so never mind that. As you can see, this works. I'm not sure how it works yet, because sometimes you think that that this shape layer and the fill and the gradient and everything should work, and sometimes it does work the way you would expect it, but sometimes it doesn't. So never mind that. Let's move to the next step, which is creating a texture. So let's reset the camera, and maybe let's create a floor for this. So new solid, whatever the color, grid, that's right, with slider 15, border 2. Let's make this into a 3D layer, and let's rotate it with holding shift so it snaps to those nice round values, and it's looking straight to the camera. Okay, and now we can move the camera a bit. You know what, let's make the depth of the extrusion a little smaller, so about 20, and set the end opacity to 50, even less, something like this, and 100. Well, now the stroke seems to mess up with the final effect. Let's increase the density. Okay, that's more like it. And overlay. Yes, it works. Okay, so it was a question of density and the depth. It happens, but I'm sure you'll get around it. Just as you can see, even I have some problems now, even though this is my technique. The second I figured this out, and I made this preset, and I decided to record a tutorial without preparing myself as good as I usually do. So let me just play a bit longer with this gradient fill, because it's so cool. It's so cool. I really love it. Okay, enough. Okay, so what we can do next is, for example, set up the stage. So let's create a new light. Let's make this a spotlight, like so. Let's turn up to the top view. That looks okay. And active camera. And what else can we do? Just to make this, look a bit better, so you can see that this is truly a 3D layer and it casts shadows. Let me turn off the accept lights for the grid layer, but we have accept shadows turned on, and let's turn this options, cast shadows. Ta-da! Works perfectly. Okay, let's turn off the light because I don't like it very much. And what we were going to do, we were going to oh yes, to make a texture. So okay, let's go to my clouds. Okay, let's set them to 3D. This is important. And now let's move the clouds just a bit to the front of the text. And now, because we still have our original text, let's press F4 and set the matte to the clouds to alpha matte of the awesome 3D. And there you go, a nice texture. And because this is a 3D layer, when we orbit around it, at some point we will start to see the original face of the text. You know what, let me just reset the camera again. Well, if the layer would be a bit smaller, then we could see, you know, what the problem is. But you can just scale it up and the problem is solved, so I figured this is quite okay. And as you can see, this sticks pretty well to the text, so now it looks more like a texture than the reflection. And if you want to make this to look like a reflection, you should just move the texture layer far away from the text. And now, when we rotate around it, if you look closely, then you can see that it really moves. It really moves, so the text layer really reflects. It looks like it's reflecting the background, but we have no background so far. So let's create one, and let's make this a 3D layer also. Let's move it to the back, and let's scale it up quite a bit, so like 500. And maybe let's turn off the grid for now. Sweet. And believe it or not, that's not all. That is not all at all. That's not all at all. What else can we do with it? Let's get rid of the texture for now, and let's get rid of the background. And now, because those are still just regular layers, we can, for example, apply some layer styles. That's right. Let's go up to layer styles and set the bevel and emboss, for example. Ta-da! But be careful when using layer styles, because they change the order of rendering 3D layers. So that's the reason why I turned off the texture, because when I turn it on again, then even though we know this one is in the front of this layer in terms of 3D space, we can still see the awesome 3D text layer, on top of it. So this is not what we want. Okay, let's turn it off. So be careful when using layer styles, but as you can see, we can use them and we can create some awesome effects with it, some awesome 3D effects with it. And let's set the soften to 2 or even more, 5, and the size to 3, for example. That's right. And the best part, we can zoom in to this like I showed you before, and we can still see that this is a 3D layer and everything is sharp because this is rasterizing each time you do some changes to this scene. So because this is vector based, so this is pretty awesome. Okay, so I think that's it. Let me just show you a few examples of how this technique can be used, and make sure to download the project file so you can, just go and see everything by yourself, so you could analyze how the things were done, how the things were built and animated. And I really hope you'll enjoy this preset, this custom effect, and make sure to leave some comments. Make sure to give me some feedback make sure to leave a comment, to give me just some feedback about this custom effect, what you think about it. And I would be really happy if I could see how you use it in your work. And one more thing, just to point out that this still is a regular 3D layer. I've already talked about it, but I haven't showed it yet. You can, for example, bind it to a null object. So let's create a new null in 3D space, and let's parent those two layers to this null object. And right now we can move it around. I mean the null object. We can move it around, scale it up, scale it down, rotate it, do all that good stuff, which helps you to animate this in a way you like. So this gives you much control over the overall look of the composition and the titles, for example, if you're going to use this in a title sequence. So once again, I hope you've liked it. Make sure to download the project file and see the animation examples, and give me some feedback. See you again. Cheers.